So where we finished off there, thinking about where we've been, I want to transition to like where we're going. And I think that it's helpful to do this just for the fact that to have a framework of anticipation, to have a bit of knowledge about where we're going, just for the fact that that allows us to be better suited to do well, I think, right? And again, I think where we're going benefits from where we've been. Okay, so we have the foundation. We have the foundation, and we have kind of the roots laid down. But now we get to build. Okay, and where we're building in the second part of the semester is kind of more of the social, ethical, philosophical side of our conversations as they relate to alcohol and alcohol use. Perhaps irresponsibility with alcohol, and I don't know if irresponsibility is a word, but you know what I'm trying to say. And we're going to get to more, I think, focused discussions as it relates to kind of our own lives and how they relate to alcohol. And in particular, in the next coming weeks, I will be in this book handling the hard stuff much more than I certainly was the first 7 weeks. So if you don't have a copy, please do pick it up, because my video lectures and my material, my notes, not that I'm giving you notes necessarily, but like what I discuss in these video lectures will reference a lot of text in here. Similarly, in the syllabus that you have access even to on BB Learn, like if you go to the syllabus, I'm going to go here right now, scroll down, and let's say, all right, April 1st, so that's a week from Thursday. It says identity and alcohol, and then it says pages 55 through 64. That means that I'm going to be discussing pages 55 through 64 on that day. So it'd be really helpful to have this material with you as you follow along in the videos, just for supplemental material, for guidance, for just kind of better, more fulfilling engagement with the course. So anyway, I will be in this book much more. All right, so what to expect in the next couple weeks. All right. So in the next couple weeks, we're going to talk about identity, both philosophically, like what kind of self are we? Do we even have an identity? Where is our identity located, if anywhere? That's kind of a hard question. Okay. And then we're going to take that kind of grand conceptual philosophical discussion and then translate it to alcohol use. Like, who are we when we consume alcohol? And if there is such a thing as an authentic self, well, are we closer to our authentic self or further away from our authentic self when we consume alcohol, right? Are we more ourselves when we're buzzed or inebriated, or are we less ourselves? What does it mean to be a self, right? So we can kind of see how those conversations become, I think, interesting and meaningful. And then we'll discuss kind of the existentialism of alcohol, to an extent, the existentialism of the philosophy of alcohol. And I primarily use Jean-Paul Sartre as our lens to engage and ask those questions. And much of those questions and much of that engagement centers around this focus on freedom and responsibility that Sartre is very passionate about. And very, I think, insightful about as well. So we'll talk about what does it mean to be a responsible alcohol drinker, consumer of alcohol. What does it mean to have freedom as it relates to our choices, right? If I'm 5 beers deep, right, which would be sufficient, I would be drunk for sure, depending on the beer in this context, yada, yada, yada. But safely assume if I have 5 beers, I will probably be drunk. Well, then to what extent does my choice to have another beer, like how much autonomy do I have over that? How much control of that do I have? How responsible am I for that 6th beer, right? And so we'll see how those questions kind of go about. Or let's say if somebody, buys a round of shots and they bring one over and they're like, Bryce, have one. Let's say I'm already kind of drunk. Do I take that shot because I want the alcohol? Do I take that shot because of the social pressure within that situation? Do I take that shot because I don't want to make the person that bought the shot feel badly? Right? So there are various ways of potentially thinking about and considering our discussions about responsibility as it relates to alcohol consumption. And then we'll take our discussion and we'll look at various lenses and theories as it relates to feminism, and apply, again, conversations of alcohol and alcohol use to various conversations that are of interest to the feminist and of feminism. We'll talk about sex and gender. We'll talk about the gendering of drinks, and if there's issues with that, and if there are issues with that, then what are they? And usually I find, especially if you are actively coming to class, some of those days are very engaging in the classroom because we get into some pretty good discussions, I think. So again, I highly encourage you to come to class, even if you haven't been coming to class. I think that you should take back up if you want. And then we'll discuss sex and gender. Like I said, we'll discuss hookup culture as it relates to alcohol use, because usually in hookup culture, especially on a college or university campus, hookup culture is connected to alcohol use, right? And so again, looking at, perhaps the positives of hookup culture, because there are perceived positives within hookup culture. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a hookup culture if there weren't perceived positives of a hookup culture, right? But typically in hookup culture, there is connections with alcohol and alcohol use, and there's also grave dangers within the hookup culture and within the use of alcohol. There's also grave dangers within the hookup culture and alcohol use in the hookup culture, which we will explore. And then we'll also talk about date rape, and we'll talk about, again, kind of alcohol use in the party scene that causes issue, causes problem, especially as it relates to gender and sexual violence. So again, some heavy topics, but I wouldn't teach them if I didn't think they were important. I wouldn't offer them as part of the requirement for the course if I didn't feel like it was absolutely, imperative to discuss them. So, and then we'll kind of round out the class, and there might be some discussions also as it relates to alcoholism, as it relates to alcohol use disorder, because alcoholism, I think, conjures up some images that are more stereotypical than actual referential to those that do suffer from alcohol dependence. And so we'll kind of discuss that later in the semester. And lastly, we'll talk about kind of the nature of a hangover. Like, is there anything we can learn about being hungover? And I actually think there are some insightful and interesting conclusions that we can maybe draw from hangovers, which we'll again talk about and discuss. And then we'll finish the class, I think, on a mildly positive note, hopefully, discussing if it's possible to drink virtuously, right? And what that would mean to be virtuous drinkers out in the world. So where we've been, talked about in the previous video, where we're going, right, is going to be deep. It's going to be heavy at times as well. So I hope that as we move through the semester and as we move through the next 6 weeks, there will be moments that not only are challenging but also enlivening. And enlivening as it relates to, again, kind of having a better relationship with alcohol. And when I say relationship, I don't mean in actual consumption, but just having more things to consider as it relates to one's alcohol use or non-use, and kind of the influence that alcohol has over so many, again, firsthand, secondhand, peripherally, etc. So I'm excited about the second part of the semester. I think that you two, you as well, we'll find reward in our topics. And of course, as always, if you ever have any questions, shoot me an email, and we can kind of discuss what we can over email. So best wishes. I hope you all are well. I hope you all are staying safe and staying healthy. Thanks.